What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast, and this is the undefeated post-weigh-in show for UFC 268. And once again, we got a big pay-per-view. We got a big fun fight card coming up, so I thought I would throw y'all a bone. I would do something a little special for you. We have another guest on the undefeated post-weigh-in show. It's one of our absolute favorites to have on the podcast, Matt Holt, the president of US Integrities. Matt, how you doing today?
Clint, here we go. I mean, what a 2-week stretch. Last week's card was so much fun. And I think this week's is even better. I think from top to bottom, this is actually a better card. Man, what a 2 weeks.
I can't wait. This fight card is so fun. It's a solid balance between prospects. You know, we've got some hype trains coming up here. We got some old dogs. Like, this card has everything. I am pumped up for UFC 268.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited. And I'm actually a little bit more excited to make bets on this card than I was last week. I could say this. I think I only ended up with five or six bets and only 4 before the card started, made one right before somebody walked out. But I'm going to have a few more this week than I had last week.
I'm right there with you. I went a little over what I expected to go on last week, and of course we know it was favorite city. You know, every parlay in the world cashed. I'm hoping we get maybe a little bit more variance this week, some more fun stuff for us to go off of, because there's a few dogs I think I like this week, and we'll get into all that. So obviously, as you all know, what I do on Fridays, I look at the fighters when they step on the scales. I want to check out and see whether or not they're feeling it. If they're having a tough weight cut, you can tell when people are out of it, weight misses. We talk about all that good stuff. And then Matt is also going to give us his opinion, and we're going to see if we can find any betting value spots here. First fight of the night, CJ Vergara taking on Ode Osborne. Vergara came in 127.4, Ode Osborne 125.2. This is a fight that takes place at 125 pounds, so CJ did, in fact, miss weight, and you're maybe a little surprised at the weights. We're in New York, folks. They've got an electric scale. It's no longer the dude with the little slidey thing on the old-fashioned wrestling scale. These ones are they're very, very precise about this stuff. There were like 3 men in suits watching every single fighter weigh in. It was definitely something. But CJ Vergara had to use the box of shame. He tried to do DC's towel trick. He was putting his elbow up on the up on the corner of the box, trying to take some weight off. They caught him. They smacked his arm and made him put his hands straight up. So he couldn't make weight. He had kind of a bit of a blank face on him. It didn't look like he had a bad weight cut, you know, so I'm not sure that I necessarily need to be looking to fade him here in this spot, but he definitely didn't get all the way down there. Ode Osborne gave a respectful bow after making weight, looked great, shredded as always at 125, no issues there. When they faced off, this was a great face-off. I mean, CJ Vergara is pumped up. He stepped in close on Ode Osborne. It was intense. They were both locked eye to eye here in this spot. I've got Ode Osborne at minus 170 to kick off the night here, Matt. I like the favorite. I think it's a big step up for CJ Vergara. And if anything, you know, the weight miss would make me want to fade this kind of a fighter. I'm already locked and loaded on the other side, so not much more I can do at this point. Do you have anything on this first fight of the night?
Only that, you know, this line I saw get as low as I think 140 or 150, now back up to 170. I even saw 180 pop a minute ago. So the money's certainly coming in on the Jamaican sensation. This is one of the few fights I passed on because for as good as he looks, as chiseled as he is, as amazing as he looks sometimes, that crazy knockout over Jerome Rivera, the armbar submission on Dana White Contender Series. He also just got absolutely destroyed in one round by Brian Kelleher and Manel Kape. Both of those are amazing fighters, certainly 2 levels above where CJ Vergara is at right now. Yeah. But he does have a history of getting caught early, whether it's the flying knee from Kape or the guillotine by Kelleher. So for that reason, I'm a little bit cautious laying a big price with Osborne, and I'm going to pass with this one.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, the other thing I looked at was maybe betting the under. I did end up siding with Ode, but I think there's plenty of finishing power on both sides of this fight that if you want to play it safe, not pick a side, play the total. Under 2.5 doesn't sound half bad to me in this spot either. The next fight up, Melsik Bagdasaryan taking on Bruno Souza. We've got Melsik coming in at 145.4. Souza came in at 148.4, second weight miss of the evening here on just the second fight of the night. Melsik honestly looked exhausted. He looked completely sucked out, but you know what? Once he got off the stage, he was moving well. He was in crazy good shape, and at the face-offs, he didn't seem bad at all. It seems like one of those ones where he may have just gotten out of the sauna or just off the treadmill, so I'm not looking too far into the fact that he didn't look great when he was on the scale. He's a big guy. He cuts a lot of weight. Bruno Souza, also a big guy, cutting a lot of weight, apparently because he missed weight here by a good, 2.5 pounds or so. Physically, unimpressive, not a guy that's shredded or anything like that. You're not expecting much from him. And when they faced off, there's a decent size advantage for Bruno, and that was something that's a little bit concerning for me. I did play Melsik by knockout at plus 150. That was kind of the only angle I really liked here on this one. Souza's just so hittable. He's a guy that is willing to let you get in close, tries to roll off with the punches, and then respond with one big bomb, that Lyoto Machida karate style striking. I just haven't been overly impressed with him, and I think Melsik is more than capable of taking a punch. If you're going to go 1-for-1, I'm definitely going to ride on the Melsik side. So I took that plus line at plus 150 for the knockout, but that's all I got here on this one. Do you have a play on the second fight of the night here, Matt?
No, I feel like these are the only two fights I might not. But again, I passed on this one. Melsik does cut a ton of weight, but for a guy who's 5'7" or 5'7.5", whatever they officially list him at, for him not to be able to make this weight's a little bit disappointing. And if he's going to be that big, because we all know his nickname's the Gun for a reason. I mean, he is tons of guns. Then maybe this guy should just move up, because physically he just doesn't look like a guy who could fight at this weight class. But at the end of the day, he's constantly going to be the shorter man with the shorter reach. And I over the history of MMA, I really have not been keen on backing shorter guys with shorter reach. I tend to find that it doesn't work out long term. I just left this fight alone because Melsik was such a big price. And the size difference when they stand next to each other, Bruno is so much bigger.
That was a stunning size difference for me. I'm glad that I don't have a giant parlay tied to Melsik or something along those lines, because I was thinking about it. This is the kind of spot where I'm definitely going to say favorite or pass, but at the same time, it's a little bit terrifying when you've got a big guy like that with such a big size advantage coming in, missing weight. It seems almost like a weight advantage more so than a disadvantage for him, because he didn't look like he was worn. He didn't look like he was sucked out. Honestly, he looked fine. So a little bit concerning. I totally get it. And if it wasn't for that, plus money knockout prop, I definitely wouldn't be on anything here.
Yeah, right. I can see that.
Yeah, man. So next fight up, we're getting to the good stuff now. Dustin Jacoby coming in here on short notice, flies in under the total, man, 203.6 pounds. He's a guy that never really cuts weight. He's another one of those walking around weight type of guys. We've seen him come in underweight before, so works well for him, especially in these short notice spots. He looked fine, no issues. Classic Dustin Jacoby. John Alon on the other side got 205 on the dot. He looked solid shape, looking good. He gave a confident smirk up there. This is a good fight in my opinion. Decent height and reach advantage here for Dustin Jacoby, but John Allen, obviously, he's a little bit shorter, a little bit squatter, maybe a little broader. Both guys look like they're really ready to go in this spot. Now, this line has absolutely exploded with Dustin Jacoby being a minus 400 favorite, plus 300 the comeback on John Alon. And I get it. I totally get it. I think Dustin Jacoby should just completely outclass John here on the feet. We know Dustin Jacoby's weakness is the grappling, so if you're going to be a high-level wrestler, maybe you can get Jacoby. John Alon is not that. So I kind of expect Jacoby here to get it done relatively comfortably. I'm kind of expecting the durability of John to hold up. He's never been knocked out before. So I think Dustin Jacoby by decision is kind of the way I'm expecting this fight to play out. But the way Jacoby strikes, wouldn't be shocked if he ended up getting it done.
I actually took a small shot on the under here, 2.5 rounds, and an even smaller shot, a third of a unit on John Alon plus 240. Right. I actually think these two are going to throw down, and Jacoby's probably not going to have to really worry about the wrestling here. And John Alon can crack. I think he's a little underestimated in terms of how well he handles how many finishes he gets in his fights. And at the end of the day, he did lose a sort of plotting, split decision to Roman Dolidze in the last fight. But if you look at his wins before that, knockout, submission, knockout, 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 knockout. I mean, this guy can bang a little bit. And I think in this fight, both guys are going to be a little bit excited to have to take on the wrestler or the grappler here, because Jacoby, for all the success he's had, has been taking on quite a few grapplers here. Darren Stewart, the one guy he took on that wasn't a grappler, Ion Kudalaba, tried to grapple him. So I think this is one of those situations where these two are going to throw down. They've made it clear that or at least they're saying they intend to throw down, which I think for guys this size, a lot of times tends to lean toward it under. 205 pounders and above, when they start throwing down with the 4-ounce gloves, you see a lot of early finishes. I could see this one being an early finish as well. And I think John Alon has a better chance in that situation than people give him credit for. So I made a tiny play on John Alon and a small play on the under.
Okay. I don't mind it whatsoever. Like I said, this line has gotten a little wide for my liking. I'm not personally touching Dustin Jacoby at minus 400, but I can understand why people like that side, but you're definitely getting in that banana peel price tag here, plus 300 on a guy in John Alon who can bang, like you mentioned. I don't mind it at all, and the under 2.5 definitely keeps you in the game to break even if Dustin is the one who ends up getting the finish. So I'll wish you luck on that one, Matt. I'm not going to bet it myself, but I'll definitely wish you good luck and root for you there. I always love when people roll the dice on a big underdog.
All right, appreciate it.
All right, we got the fight of the night coming up next. Gian Villante taking on Chris Barnett. And Matt, I am in better. I took this fight more seriously than Gian Villante did. I trained harder for this fight than Gian Villante did. He came in at 260.6. Literally looked like he rolled off the couch. He was all smiles, but he's got a giant packed gut on him for this one. He was at 205 just last fight or the fight before that. Like, he completely took this fight off. Chris Barnett, 263.8, the shortest heavyweight you will ever see. But this is a man who is surprisingly athletic for how big he is and has regularly fought at upwards of 300 pounds on the regional scene before. So believe it or not, he came in slightly better shape looking the way he did at 263 pounds. He was having fun, bouncing around, having a good time. When they faced off, big size advantage here for Gian Villante, as we kind of tend to expect with Chris Barnett. He's never going to have a size advantage. Both guys kind of smiling and goofing off here. This is the worst fight on the card by a country mile, and believe it or not, I am way overexposed to it. I do have the over 1.5. I got in early at minus 160 on that. That's been steamed all the way up to minus 200, minus 225. So I really love that over 1.5 to kick the fight off. I don't think either of these guys are really capable of finishing the other one, if I'm being honest. And then I think they both probably gas out at about the 2-minute mark of the second round, and then they just kind of lay on each other for the rest of the fight. I don't think anyone's getting finished. So all I got to do is sweat 7.5 minutes there. And then I do have a 1-unit play on Chris Barnett at plus 110. It's been announced Gian Villante is hanging it up after this one, Matt. It's his retirement fight. And I always take the opportunity to fade fighters who have one foot in the grave and are looking to hang up the fight, because when they're training, are they going to run that extra mile when they know they're retiring? If they get put in a tough spot, are they really going to battle it out to try to stay in it and fight for their rankings? No, they don't care. Sometimes you see fighters just completely fold on their retirement fight because it's over. They've already been beat mentally. Anthony Rumble Johnson is a perfect example of a guy that just phoned it in on his last fight because he already knew it was over. So I'm going to take the opportunity to fade Gian Villante one final time, and the over 1.5 is where I'm at. But at this point, it's kind of hard to pick a side. I don't necessarily, I don't know that anybody should necessarily be betting this fight. Gian Villante's got a much bigger frame. He's got a height and a reach advantage here, maybe a skill set advantage, but I think he's going to struggle to find any neck on Chris Barnett as far as any subs go. And both guys have been very durable. I think we're going to get a sloppy 15-minute fight here, Matt. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I do as well. I took Chris Barnett, and I went the opposite on the total. But what's strange is the same reasons you bet the over, I bet the under. So I said there's no way that these two don't gas. And I wondered if Galante got put in any tough spot at all, would he just give up? Because the fact that he obviously didn't train 1 second for this fight shows that he really doesn't care. He's just getting one more payday before he becomes a wrestling coach, as well as, I guess it's 3 things: a substitute teacher, gym teacher, and wrestling coach, or Football coach. No, that's what it is. Football coach. Substitute teacher, football coach, and wrestling coach all at the same school. That was the job. Now I remember. And so he doesn't care a bit. And if he doesn't care, how hard is he going to try to fight out of any position he got put in? Plus, once the total went over 200, it just became too tempting for a guy who didn't train a bit and has been very chinny throughout his career to say, well, this guy's going to get in there and duke it out. But I also took Barnett, and I wish I didn't have 2 bets on this fight as well.
I'm kicking myself, Matt. I've got way too much money invested on by far the worst fight of the night.
Yes.
Hey, I'm a complete degenerate. We know that
I'm with
as
you.
is. But yeah, man, betting the over 1.5 on a guy that's been knocked out 5 times is a little bit terrifying. I'm kind of counting on the fact that he's carrying that extra weight around and he's taking on a guy who's got a much stubbier frame than his. I'm hoping they wrestle for the first 5 minutes. And then, like I said, they're just too exhausted to do anything to each other after that point. All right. Moving the show right along. We're working our way through this bad boy. Ian Gary taking on Jordan Williams. Gary comes in at 169.6. Looked great. Big time prospect, undefeated kid. Everyone's excited about this guy. Jordan Williams, 170.6. He looked sucked out, if I'm being honest. He doesn't look like an island boy anymore, though. He cut the hair off. He's looking much cleaner now. Big size difference from Ian. You know, I'm always shocked. Every single weekend, there's a couple of fights where the numbers don't add up to the eye test. And this is one of them. Ian Gary is massive in there. It looks like they're in different weight classes. And I think that he is more than justified with this price tag. The only problem is that I do not like parlaying or betting UFC debutantes because, you know, this is a spot where Jordan Williams has been there, done that. Ian Gary's trying to do it for the first time. Jordan Williams has competed against this level of competition a couple of times, so I don't want to just completely count him out. But realistically, Gary should have him covered pretty much everywhere. The only thing that really stood out to me at the face-offs is the size, and like I said, I'm not parlaying a favorite who's UFC debutant at minus 400, so this one's a pass for me, Matt, but I don't mind people parlaying Ian Gary, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a finish.
Yeah, once upon a time, fading UFC debutantes who were favorites was one of the best plays by sharps. But what happened is COVID hit, and suddenly we got this reign of guys making their UFC debut without the pressure of all the media, without the pressure of all the fans, and the bright lights don't feel so bright when it's a big empty arena and you can hear your coaches. It more felt like a gym or a regional fight scene where most of these guys came from.
Yep.
But those days are gone. We're going to be back to full crowd inside with a huge, not just a full crowd, but a huge pay-per-view, frantic crowd. And that makes me doubly worried about a UFC debutante who's a favorite here. And I will say this, look, I have a Celtic cross tattoo on my arm. So, you know that, I'm on the Irish side here. My family's Irish, but at the end of the day, there's too much respect. There's like a little premium you're paying for any prospect who comes over from Ireland right now. People are just enamored with them, especially
McGregor.
Yeah, McGregor, and then you have like Paddy the Batty coming over from Europe, and a couple of those guys, and the media and people are falling in love with them. And a lot of people, we have one tonight fighting on the Bellator card, right? In the main event, actually, taking on Pitbull, another former McGregor teammate who's probably getting a little too much love. And here, Gary, another one of those guys. I think he's a great prospect. I think he's awesome. He showed in his last fight that he can go 5 rounds, where he actually went 5 rounds for the first time in his career. So one more checkbox answer for Gary. How's his stamina if he gets taken deep? So I think there's a lot to like. I think Williams has been a bit of a disappointment, but I think his level of competition thus far is also light years ahead of Gary. We're talking about a guy who fought and lost to Imavov, fought and lost to Mickey Gall, who, whether you like Mickey Gall or not, he has gotten better.
He's finally turned into a UFC fighter.
A UFC fighter.
To put it together, but he's here now.
So I'm just passing on this one. I can't get on the Williams side because he looked so bad in the Imavov fight, and then he just didn't look like he had anything, going for Mickey Gall. But on the other side, what a price to lay more than minus 400 or at least minus 400 on a guy making his promotional debut.
Absolutely. It's too much for me to stomach, Matt. I can't do it. So good luck to everybody betting in. You probably cash, and maybe I'm a coward, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Next up, Edmund Shahbazian taking on Nasruddin Imavov. A couple of semi-busted prospects that are trying to recover and get back on the right track. One's going up, one's going down. Shahbazian came in at 185.4, Imavov 184.6. And Shahbazian looked good. Didn't seem to have any issues on the scale, gave a good flex. Nasruddin Imavov, they made him take his pants off. I'll be honest, Matt, it was a little bit weird. I'm talking about the guys in the suits that were monitoring everything throughout this whole thing. He was like, no, I'll make weight with the pants on. And they were like, no, pants off. It was like, all right, buddy, calm down a little bit. Imavov came in under the limit, made weight just fine, looked good, pounded his chest. Honestly, he's in great shape here. And these guys face off and size up extremely well. I thought Imavov was going to have a slight advantage here, but they are like toe-to-toe, eye-to-eye. And this bad boy is a pick-em. You've got Imavov a minus 120 favorite, minus 125 in a couple places, plus 100 the comeback on Shahbazian. And I'm terrified, Matt. This is a spot where I am ready to bet Nasruddin Imavov because he checks all the boxes. He does all the things right that you want to beat Edmund Shahbazian. And Shahbazian has just looked so bad his last couple of fights. But he's finally getting a break. He's finally stepping down in competition, a 2-level step down in competition, which is where he really should have been in this spot all along. We forget about how good of a boxer he is. He's training at AKA, so there's a chance for a lot of big-time improvements from him. And let's not forget that Imavov has a tendency of gassing and slowing down in his fights himself. So as much as everything is screaming at me to bet Imavov, this just feels like such a trap. It feels like everyone's going to pile on Imavov to kick Edmund Shahbazian while he's down, and it feels like a trap to me, Matt. Am I crazy? What are you doing on this one?
I'm on Shahbazian, and I actually got plus 105 in this fight. I saw a big wave of money come in on Imavov here, driving the line up to like minus 130 his side. I ended up getting plus 105 on Edward Shahbazian. Imagine being 22 years old and taking on Derek Brunson, who, oh, by the way, is on this career resurgence and might be the number one contender right now at middleweight. And Jack Hermanson at 22 years old. I mean, they threw this kid to the wolves. And it's not necessarily the UFC's fault or the matchmaker's fault, but it does seem to happen a lot more in UFC than some of these other organizations like Bellator, and especially never happens in boxing. They want everyone to be 30-0 before they fight anybody worth fighting. But at the end of the day, it seemed like at 22 years old, those were some tall mountains to climb. And after the Brunson fight, they could have done him a favor and backed him back down. And sort of like they're doing with Sean O'Malley and some of these other prospects where they seem to be taking it much slower. They really, were giving this kid some, throwing him to the wolves. But here we go, to your point, a step back in class. And he's actually done pretty well against tall guys. So Imavov 6'3", Shahbazian's always been a tall middleweight at 6'2", and with his frame, he feels like he has some room to fill out still too. He was always a slender guy, 21, fighting in the UFC. I like Shahbazian. I think young guys could take the biggest step. They could show the greatest improvement. They have the most room to grow. And we saw in his fight against Brad Tavares that he has some pretty good success against taller strikers, and I think he's going to have some success here. And I like the young Shahbazian to bounce back. Talking about how overrated the Irish guys, Pitbull KO round 2. So looks like Connor's training partner just went night-night.
Wow, that's crazy. And that, you know what, Matt? I'll be honest. I completely stayed away from Bellator today, and I'm so glad that I did. Bellator is well known amongst the MMA betting community for just being chalk parlays.
Yeah.
All you got to do is tie together all the favorites, and they always come through. There were like 6 underdogs or something on today's card. It was a bloodbath. If you knew what you were looking for, you made some great money today. And that was one where I looked at the main event. You go back and you watch that last fight, and it got stopped, TKO for the other guy. But he really did nothing impressive in that fight whatsoever. And I'm thinking, yikes, like, do you really want to fade Pitbull on a back-to-back when he's by far the more skilled fighter and the guy got like a lucky cut stoppage? I took a look at the dog and went, no, I'm good. I'm just going to step away from here. So I dodged a couple bullets today, Matt.
There you go.
Gotta love that. Penny saved is a penny earned, in my opinion, especially when it comes to betting. All right, so Matt, you may have talked me into Edmund. I have a lot of action on this card already. Haven't bet that fight just yet, and I'm extremely tempted to ride with you on Edmund Shahbazian here in this spot. I feel like he could get back to his old ways, and if his gas tank looks any better, I mean, one thing that we see regularly is that his weakness is the ground game, right? Like Imavov is a guy that doesn't really go for the grappling. He's turned into more of a striker. He's not a guy that's going to look to take you down and grind you because he gets tired himself. So this is the kind of opponent that Edmund could look good against and have a complete bounce back performance. So yeah, I might line up with you there on that spot.
And I think if Imavov tries to strike with Shahbazian, he's going to realize really quickly that while this young man's only 23 years old, his striking is really good and he has unbelievable power.
I agree. And I think he's going to have a speed advantage as well, which is a big deal in MMA. The hand speed is a problem. All right, next fight up, the one where I may have the hottest take on the card here, Matt. We've got Phil Megatron Hawes taking on Chris Curtis. Phil Hawes came in at 185.4. You know, this guy is solid muscle. He looked good. No problem, no issues. I talk about his physique constantly every time this guy is on a card because he's ridiculous. Chris Curtis, his opponent, finally getting his shot in the UFC, made 186 this morning, and he looks solid. This guy was in great shape. I mean, well muscled. He's just got a little bit smaller of a frame from Phil Hawes. He was doing the bodybuilding pose when he was up there having a good time. He looked pretty good. When they face off, obviously size advantage is going to go to Megatron, but Chris was not impressed. He didn't blink one bit when he got up in the face of Phil Hawes. He seemed to be the one that was kind of winning the mental battle, if I'm being honest, there in that spot. I already backed the dog here, Matt. Call me crazy, but I have tried to fade Phil Hawes a couple times. I think that some of those issues he had earlier in his career have not gone away. They've just been masked by good matchmaking. And I think that a guy like Chris Curtis that can defend the takedowns, make him work, drag him deep, be tough, be durable, and then flip the tables on him later in the fight, that's the kind of guy that's going to end up getting it done for me. So I bet Chris Curtis. I think I got him at plus 260. I've got a half unit on the knockout prop. It was 6-1 when I made the bet. That's all the way down to 4-1 now. And then I did sprinkle his round 3 finish prop. I put a quarter unit on that bad boy. And got to get my hand here for the sprinkle. 26-1 for him to win in round 3 on FanDuel. So wow. I am all in on the dog here, Matt. I'm looking for a big fat score. It's been a while since I've hit one of these, but really looking for it this weekend and loved what I saw from him on the scales today. So do you have a play on this one? What are you doing here?
I don't yet. First of all, congrats to Curtis for finally making it to the UFC. This is a guy that fought on Dana White Contender Series and won in 2018, but didn't earn a contract. Fought 4 times in PFL, ended up going 1-3 where he fought Magomed Mago Kirimov. I always mess that guy's name up. Fought him twice, lost both times. Fought Ray Cooper, got knocked out by him, but has been so good and so consistent on some of the better regional scenes in the country. Currently on another 5-fight win streak. He finally gets his first crack in the UFC now at 34 years old. What's interesting is you rarely see Phil Hawes taller than people. He's always the stronger looking guy, but a lot of times he's shorter. 5'10", 5'11" for a middleweight nowadays isn't very tall. But he's taller than Curtis. And I'm just like, how short is Curtis? He's listed at like 5'10", but I always thought Hawes was 5'10" too. So now I'm wondering how tall Curtis really is at 185.
Yeah. Break out the measuring tape. Somebody fix those numbers.
I mean, I bet against Hawes in the Imavov fight, lost that decision. I didn't bet against him in the Dawkins fight. I just didn't bet it, but he beat Dawkins too. I'm just wondering if we're not giving Phil Hawes enough credit for, his gas tank seems to be good. He stays in fights. He's pretty aggressive. He's not great, but I don't know. I just left this one alone. I like your side. I think Curtis has looked really good on the regional scene. I'm always wonder about guys that win on Dana White Contender Series but didn't get a contract. And he won with like a hook kick, which no one ever wins with like a spinning hook kick or something.
Too.
Yeah, and the fact that you still went out there and got the job done and won the fight in the third round and then didn't get a contract, just weird stuff. But I ended up leaving it alone.
I can totally understand that, and I get it. A couple people have reminded me how much money I've lost betting against Phil Hawes, and that wasn't very nice of you, but it's valid. So I do get it, and I get what you're saying as far as maybe we're not giving him enough credit, and that is possible. But I just feel like this is an opportunity I can't pass up, Matt. This is the exact kind of fighter who's going to take advantage of the problems that Phil Hawes had. Now, I know I said that last time when he fought Imavov, but like I said, Imavov is a guy that slows down later on himself. He's a guy that gasses out and doesn't wrestle all that much. So even though I thought he was the guy that would take advantage of it, he did none of the things I expected him to in order to take advantage of it. Chris Curtis, on the flip side, it's proven throughout his career, he does exactly what I'm talking about every single fight. You look back at that Magomed-Karamov fight, he had Magomed completely exhausted in the third round and running for his life. Like, Magomed was doing everything he could to avoid this man in that third round just to get to the judges' scorecards. That's the kind of aggression I'm talking about. In fact, he commented on Instagram. He replied to somebody talking to him about the fight that he said he's going to knock Phil Hawes out in round 3. So I'm banking on the fact that he knows the game plan. He understands the assignment, and I'm going to back him here. One more point that I want to make. Shout out to my guy, Cody Saftik, over at the Dogger Pass podcast. He pointed out the fact that the one knockout loss on Curtis's record, it did come from Ray Cooper III in PFL. Apparently, something I didn't put 2 and 2 together on, apparently he fought Magomed-Karamov and Ray Cooper III on the same night, Matt. Something happened that night where Magomed was unable to compete in the main event. The main event fighter that was supposed to fight Ray Cooper dropped out, and Curtis was the only guy they had to throw in there. So they literally go backstage and ask him to suit back up after losing a 15-minute decision and get out there and fight for the title. And that's when he went out after already fighting a 15-minute war, exhausted, and gets knocked out. So
wow, I didn't know that. I didn't
realize that. My guy Cody's got all the stories and the inside details on these kinds of things. So again, that's straight from the Dogger Pass podcast. I'll need to go back and check the dates on that, but it would explain why a guy who's never been knocked out by anybody took his first KO loss as a professional. So
I had just written it off as, that's what Ray Cooper III does.
That's what Ray Cooper does.
And even if it was just the case, you're right, October 11th, 2019, both of them. I'll be a son of a gun. Wow.
Right? So he's already got 15 minutes of hard fighting in the bank, goes in the back, cools off, he's exhausted, he lost, he's wiped out, and then they run back and tell him to go out and do it again. He fights his ass off again in the first round against Ray Cooper, and then gets caught with a bomb in the second. And I watched that Ray Cooper fight not having any idea that he had fought a 15-minute fight beforehand. He looked fine in round 1. He was competitive in round 1 with Ray Cooper after having a 15-minute fight in his back pocket already. So I think he's just way underrated, Matt. I think he's way underrated. I think this line is wide. And Megatron is a guy who I'm looking to expose with that cardio deficiency. I feel like it's going to come back if he gets the right kind of guy messing with him. If he decides to strike here with Cooper, this fight could be a 1-round fight. Maybe Megatron knocks him out. Sure, it could possibly happen, but I'll bank on that durability. If Hawes decides to wrestle with him, this man has made a career out of defending the grappling, getting up, forcing them to work, and then when they're tired, he's a smaller guy at the weight class. We saw that at the face-offs. His gas tank lasts a whole hell of a lot longer, even though he's working. Because of that, he'll be fresher in round 3 than Phil Hawes will, so I'm going for it. I got the dog, I got KO, and I got the round 3.
You talked me into it. I wasn't as high on Curtis, but now that I saw that he fought twice on that same night for PFL, I'm much more intrigued, and now I want to put my money on it too.
Let's go. All right. I love it. So we have already way gone over the allotment of time here, Matt. So thanks for hanging with me. I apologize. We got a couple more fights to get to on this bad boy. Al Iaquinta taking on Bobby King Green. Al came in at 155.8, Bobby Green 155.2. No issues from Al. He looked good, not really concerned. First time having him on the scales in a while. Haven't seen him in a bit. Bobby Green absolutely shredded. And let me tell you, he looks serious as a heart attack today. He is dialed in and focused. He's not having fun. He's not goofing off. Now, when they get to the face-offs, I think Bobby Green's got a chip on his shoulder here, Matt. He's upset with the way Al's been talking to him. He came out in full-on clown makeup for the face-offs. Al did not seem to take too kindly to that. This was a very intense face-off. And I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised at how big Al Iaquinta is. He's a decent bit larger than Bobby Green physically, broad-wise. So I'm a little worried about the grappling. We know Bobby Green's got a good get-up game, good takedown defense, excellent submission defense. So when I say I'm worried, the size of Al Iaquinta makes me a little bit scared, but not a ton. Like, not as much as I'm not cashing out of my bet or anything like that. But I did lay the chalk on Bobby Green here, Matt. I do think he's just more current, more active, and the fact that he never slows down, you can't keep this man on the mat. It's been since 2016 for Al Iaquinta to actually land a takedown on anybody, and if Fiziev can't knock out Bobby Green, I'm not expecting Al Iaquinta to. I put 3.3 units on Bobby Green at minus 160, I believe I got, minus 165 to win 2 units. He was one of my favorite plays on the card, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, 10 straight fights for Bobby Green have gone the distance. He just goes the distance, period, nowadays. I mean, that's just his fighting style. He is always in it. And look, that Fiziev fight, he had a couple of opportunities. He hurt Fiziev late in that third round. It wasn't just that he was surviving. He hurt Fiziev and may have scored a late knockout victory almost. There's so many question marks with Al Iaquinta here. He hasn't fought since October of 2019, hasn't won a fight since December of 2018 versus Kevin Lee. He did have a 5-fight win streak from September of 2014 to April of 2018 that earned him that title shot against Khabib. Well, that interim title shot against Khabib, which turned into the infamous night with Conor. And obviously he lost that fight. But, Al Iaquinta always struck me as a guy who didn't love fighting and wanted to do something else, and is quit fighting multiple times, has always been torn whether he wants to be a fighter. It would always be Bobby Green or pass for me here, but I missed the early numbers. It's like minus 180 now. I didn't want to lay that with Bobby Green, a guy who's 4-4 in his last 8 fights and doesn't always earn love from the judges, it appears. Certainly gets plenty of love from the fans, not as much love from the judges. I ended up leaving it alone.
Okay. I think that's perfectly fair, and I've stepped in it with Bobby Green before because, as we all know, he makes every single fight close. So I'm definitely going to be sweating bullets in that third round when it's 1-1 going into the third, and I've got a big bet on a chalky fighter who fights closely with his opponent. But I'm kind of with you here. I feel like Al Iaquinta's got one foot in the grave. He's fighting in his home turf here because he has one opportunity to do so. Wouldn't be surprised if he retires after this fight or shortly hereafter because he just has had no interest in fighting. He's coming off of back-to-back surgeries. I don't know that he's the same tough, durable guy he was anymore. We'll find out on Saturday. I have no problem rolling the dice here, betting against him a little bit. If I lose, this is the kind of case where it's like, so be it. If Al turns back the clock on me after this long and, makes another run at the title after this or something crazy, like, it is what it is. Next fight
It'll
up.
be interesting because once upon a time when Al Iaquinta lets those hands go, he can throw hands with anybody.
It's true. It's true. He can. But again, I have no problem relying on the durability of Bobby Green. Al doesn't have anywhere near the power of Dustin Poirier, and that's the only guy that got Bobby Green out of there. So it'll be fun. It should be a fun fight. If nothing else, Bobby Green fights are always fast-paced.
Yes. No, it'll be a good fight.
It'll be good. All right. Next up, we got Alex Pereira, the man who knocked out Israel Adesanya, taking on Andreas Mikulic. Pereira comes in at 185.8, and boy, did he look mean on the scales today. Good shape, no issues. Mikulic came in at 185 and looked absolutely exhausted, folks. Like this one, he did not look good at all. And I mean, it was to the point where he was like gesturing at somebody to like hand him his shoes. He didn't want to bend over and pick his stuff up to walk off the scales. I think he had a rough weight cut. He looked terrible. Then when they face off, it gets even better. Alex Pereira is massive. This was another one that looked like two guys in separate weight classes. Alex Pereira has such a height and reach advantage. It's ridiculous. This is the guy who's got legitimate death touch. And I know people are worried about his grappling. I know people are worried about the takedown on him. But I think he's just going to absolutely flatline Mikulic with that left hand as he tries to enter in for a takedown. This is a spot that I think we just need to not think about too hard, make it easy. A lot of people are bringing up the Clarissa Shields situation. The UFC isn't letting this guy take an L on his first run here. They're trying to set up a champion versus champion, grudge match with Israel Adesanya. They know what they're doing here. I fully expect Alex Pereira to come out and knock out Andreas Mikulic. I don't have a bet on it yet, but I'm very tempted to just take Alex Pereira by knockout.
That might be the way to approach it. I actually went under 1.5 rounds plus 130, figuring that either Pereira is going to knock him out right away or Mikulic catches him in something and gets him early, probably more likely when they're dry before they get sweaty, because I knew he had a hard weight cut and I thought he's going to gas after the second round anyway. So if he doesn't catch him in a submission in the first round, he probably doesn't. And if Pereira doesn't knock him out early, I'll be a little bit surprised, because if they're standing on their feet, it looks like this one's one-sided. And the unders plus money, I couldn't help it. I ended up playing the under for a pretty good size bet.
I talked about that on my Total Takedown show, where I go over the totals on every single fight on this one, Matt. And I looked at that one. I mentioned the under 1.5 because I think you're absolutely right. I think the gas tank could be a problem, and more often than not, I'm just expecting Alex to land a first-round knockout. If he does get taken down, I think that he should be a fish out of water and probably gets TKO'd or subbed on the mat because he just doesn't know what he's doing down there. So plus money on the under 1.5, that might be the way to go, and I might just join you there.
All right, let's do it.
I like it. Let's go. I talked you into one. You talked me into one. We'll ride together this weekend. I'll lock it in right after the show. Justin Gaethje taking on Michael Chandler. Gaethje came in at 155.6, Chandler 155.2. No issues for Justin Gaethje. Look fine, business as usual for the man. Michael Chandler, absolutely massive. Holy hell, can this boy flex? Like he knows what he's doing up there and enjoys it when he's up there flexing. He is thick. This was a super intense face-off, Matt. These guys were both talking, both guys amped up. This is one of the fights to watch. I know we've got several of them, but I cannot wait for this one. I side with Justin Gaethje here. He's got a decent height advantage, but somehow Michael Chandler has those gorilla arms thing going on. He's got the reach advantage. I just think this line is disrespectful and too wide. I think Justin Gaethje wins. I think he's fought the better caliber of opposition, but counting out a guy that hits as hard as Michael Chandler and wrestles the way he does, plus 175, I don't blame anybody for taking the dog shot. This is a spot where I'm going to say favorite or pass, but if you want value, there's plenty of it on the Michael Chandler side. I can't quite get to the window with it. I think I'm just going to enjoy this one.
Me too. I didn't play it either. But look, Chandler's 6-2 last 8 and almost knocked out Charles Oliveira and became the UFC lightweight champion of the world. I mean, that was really close to happening. And what would the odds on this fight be? That's what I was trying to think in my mind. If Chandler would have knocked out Oliveira, is this fight a pick'em? Because I think it might be, but because he didn't, and Oliveira comes back and ends up knocking out Chandler. Now it's Gaethje minus 200, and everyone talks about that. 4-1 in last 5 for Gaethje. At the end of the day, he's 5-3 in the UFC. Got knocked out by Eddie Alvarez. Got knocked out by Dustin Poirier. Got dominated by Khabib. And that 4-fight win streak that made everyone think that, Gaethje was the best lightweight in the world, those wins over James Vick, gone, retired, Edson Barbosa, not in the division anymore, Cowboy Cerrone might as well be gone, Tony Ferguson, never the same after that fight, not even close. None of those 4 wins have held well over time. In fact, over time, none of them look very impressive on paper anymore. I'm wondering if Gaethje, just sort of like Colby Covington to me, fought some of these legends at the right time in their career and maybe is getting a little too much hype now. And minus 200 against Michael Chandler to me seems really inflated here. I haven't bet it, but it would have to be dog or pass for me.
I couldn't agree more. And I hate to say it because like I said, my gut tells me Justin Gaethje gets it done, but I feel like my eyes are almost lying to me a little bit. Like you mentioned, that class of opponent that he's been facing, when you think about it, it's nothing special. I mean, he did give Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier all they could handle in those first 3 rounds. So I know the guy's talented. I know he's worthy of being in the top 5 here at 155, but we just saw what his opponent could do to the current champion. And I think Charles Oliveira is a guy that I have regularly disrespected. So I think there's a little bit of that going on here, that a lot of people think he's a bit of a paper champion and some other people in the division are probably more worthy. And that's kind of given us an inflated line. So while my gut says Justin Gaethje is going to win this thing, that's why I'm not betting it. And it would just be classic me, Matt, to zig when I should be zagging. I bet on Hooker when he made his UFC debut. He won by first round knockout. I bet on him when he fought Charles Oliveira, and he almost won the fight, but not quite. Gets blasted in the second round and gets knocked out. And then if I go lay minus 210 on Justin Gaethje for his bounce back fight when he's a plus 175 dog, he absolutely will win by first round knockout. So I cannot for the life of me bounce on the other side and go against Michael Chandler here, because I would just be dooming everybody who bet Justin Gaethje if I did that, because that's I'm cursed. I cannot figure this man out, so I'm just gonna pass.
Yeah, we all have fighters like that for sure. Yeah.
He's one of mine. I mean, I know it's only 2 fights, but when you get 2 back-to-back wrong like that, you just pass on the third. You just take one off.
That's right. You're just not reading that fighter well, and it's good to sort of start over, start fresh, and rethink who that fighter might be sometimes.
Exactly. So that's what I'm going to do. Reset this weekend. All right. Shane Burgos taking on Billy Q. A couple of guys that I actually feel like I do have a good read on. Shane Burgos came in at 145.6. Billy Q, 145.4. Shane Burgos was doing the crazy eyes thing up there on the scales. Fantastic shape. This guy is pumped up, moving around well, looks good. Billy Q came in, looked good as well. He's in great shape. And Shane was screaming his face off at the ceremonial weigh-ins. It was fun. And these guys are 1-for-1 on the size ratio, Matt. They size up extremely well. This is going to be one hell of a fight between 2 guys that use volume as a weapon here on Saturday. I kind of agree with the line, though, if I'm being honest. I just cashed a big underdog ticket with Billy Q his last time out against Mowgli Benitez. Got that 3rd round stoppage for me. Nice little sprinkle spot there. But I think Shane Burgos just really kind of has him pipped everywhere. And I use that term pip. Poker players are going to know what I'm talking about. Like, if you have ace queen, I've got ace king. Like, it's just that little tip better than what you've got. I feel like that's Shane Burgos in this spot. He's got a reach advantage, and I know we're questioning what's going on with his body. That's really the only reason I haven't laid the hammer on this spot at minus 200 for a big fat bet, is because with the way his body shut off last time, I'm a little worried he's coming back a little too quickly. But I just think he's the all-around better striker than Billy Q. He's the better wrestler, so I don't think Billy Q's jiu-jitsu is going to come into play. And if he's forced to stand with Shane Burgos for 15 minutes, Billy Q's a guy that we have seen get hurt and rocked on the feet and slowed down. Shane Burgos just eats punches and walks right through everything. I think it's Shane Burgos by knockout, but I can't quite bring myself to bet it. How do you got this one going on, Matt?
Yeah, I like Hurricane Shane. Speaking of guys that hurt Billy Q on the feet and almost finished him, Spike Carlisle, who's not even in the UFC anymore, almost got Billy early in that fight. It's interesting to me in this fight, we have 2 guys that are combined 1 inch taller than Hawes and Curtis are, and they're fighting at 185. These 2 are fighting at 145. Amazing how big these 2 guys are for 145 pounds. They are both huge 145ers. I think it's going to be a fun fight at the end of the day. I think Shane's a little bit too good for him. We have seen him got hurt, though, in both of those back-to-back losses against Josh Emmett and Edson Barbosa. So we'll have to see how he bounces back. But for me, it's Hurricane Shane or pass.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. And Billy Q's whole thing is basically striking without getting hit back at a 5-inch reach disadvantage. I just don't think that's going to work against a guy like Shane Burgos. He's going to force the issue.
Let's face it, Billy has been fighting guys that are really short. Like Spike Carlisle's one of the shortest guys in the division. Spike's gone now. He's back on the regional scene. But, Billy's one of the biggest guys in the division. But at the end of the day, I think actually fighting someone taller than him is going to do a big disservice to Billy. Not taller. I guess Billy's a half-inch taller here, yeah. But actually has a reach disadvantage in this fight. I just think, he doesn't fight many guys his size, and Shane's going to be able to throw down. Just going to be a little bit too fast, a little bit harder puncher, but in there with a little bit better level of competition. I just think it's Hurricane Shane, to your point, by a little bit everywhere.
I completely agree. And this is a spot where, you know what, I'll go ahead and make the announcement now. I haven't bet it yet, but if I'm having an okay night, if I cash a couple tickets, or hell, even if I need to chase, don't be surprised if I tweet out Shane Burgos on fight night that I'm loading up on my boy. I do like Shane here, favored or pass in my opinion, and I think the knockout prop at plus 225 is actually pretty juicy. Next fight up, Frankie Edgar, Marlon Chito Vera. Frankie came in at 135.6, Marlon Vera 135. Frankie looked amazing. I mean, Frankie always is in good shape, but he looks excellent down here at 135. He should have been here years ago. Marlon Vera looked good, very unamused on the scales. I mean, he's a very interesting guy, so can't read too much into that. When they face off, Matt, this is one of the ones I'm talking about. I, in my mind, envisioned Marlon Vera just being twice the man that Frankie Edgar is, just being huge, towering over him, being intimidating, ultra tall, ultra big for the division. Frankie went nose to nose with this man. He was ever so slightly smaller than Marlon Vera. He sized up extremely well, in my opinion. Frankie stepped in close on Marlon Vera. He's not afraid of this kid, not looking to take shit. It was a great face-off, if I'm being honest. And I pulled the trigger, Matt. I was hoping this line would get bigger. I know how big of a favorite Marlon Vera is out there in the world. I know a lot of people like to back and support him, so I was hoping Frankie would get up to plus 155 or plus 160. The line peaked out at plus 145 and ticked down to 140. That's where I got it. I jumped on the train. I got 1 unit on Frankie Edgar at plus 140. I got a half unit on Frankie Edgar by decision at plus 250. The reason I split it that way is because Marlon Vera is not a guy that you finish, so I'm not really expecting Frankie to get the finish. But just in case, I'm only doing 1 unit on the money line and then a half unit on the decision prop, because we have seen Frankie absolutely big brother people on the floor before and get them out of there with submissions, with ground and pound. He's more than capable. And the fact that he sizes up well with Marlon Vera was a big factor in why I did pull the trigger, because we've seen Marlon Vera get stuck on his back. We've seen his wrestling just not be that good and him be stuck on the ground with guys. He's been big enough, strong enough to kind of stand his way back up to the feet and fight his way back in. But again, that size advantage, if he doesn't have it there, I think Frankie's going to have no problem just kind of using the technique and keeping this kid on his back the whole night. So I'm expecting Frankie to show him what the next level up looks like on the mat.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you double bet this fight, because I also double bet this fight. 2 pluses for me. I took Frankie Edgar at plus by decision, and then I took under 2.5 rounds plus 155. Because I think, look, the one thing that makes me nervous is that he has been knocked out in 2 straight losses, Frankie Edgar, and guys don't carry their chin well in their 40s. It just doesn't happen in MMA. Guys that have had good chins their whole career suddenly have no chin when they're 40. And, I mean, Frankie fought 2 unbelievable strikers in Korean Zabi and Corey Sandhagen. So is it that Frankie fought 2 unbelievable strikers and that's why he got knocked out in back-to-back fights? Or is it or is it at least some of it because at 40 years old, it's hard to still have a really good chin? So I thought, look, at the end of the day, Marlon showed in the Pedro Munoz fight, I just don't think his boxing, his overall MMA stand-up game is there to go head-to-head with the fastest fighters in the world. We saw it against Munoz. We saw it against Jose Aldo. That he just, look, I mean, he's a tough guy, and he's played that part well against Yadong Song, where Yadong Song's fading late and Marlon Vera's coming on. That's the Marlon everybody fell in love with. Always the hard charger late in fights, but he was also always down in those fights. It ends up losing controversial split decisions, and then when he steps up to a level 1 notch higher, he always seems to lose those decisions. So I like Frankie by decision at a plus, and just in case that chin is gone, I would took under 1.5 rounds plus 155 instead of, sort of having both sides, in my opinion, at plus money.
I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. You're definitely protecting yourself on both sides of the fight. I do like that. I think my big thing with Vera is that he's nowhere near as fast or accurate as someone like Sandhagen. He's a big, wild, winging power puncher. That's the guy that Frankie's still faster than. That's the guy that Frankie can still out-technique and slip the jab and get down in on the hips. So that's kind of what I'm counting on here. But you're right. We, at 40, people tend to fall off. And guys, everyone's looking for my damn good reason to bet on a 40-year-old, and it's Hall of Famer Frankie Edgar. That's my damn good reason. The wrestling is the other damn good reason for this bet here. So I'm definitely hoping you cash the Frankie by decision one more so than the under 2.5 here, Matt. But as long as Frankie does it via ground and pound, I'll be okay with the under 2.5 hitting.
Yeah.
All right, co-main event time. The rematch, Rose Namajunas taking on Weili Zhang. Both women came in at 115 on the dot. Now, there was a little bit of controversy. Weili made 115.2 on her first try. They're using the electronic scale. If it was the old-fashioned scale, they would have just kind of given her the nod with that 0.2, but they needed her to hit 115 on the dot. So she did need the box of shame, and she really just kind of removed her mask and her clothes. She was fine. Like, it's nothing to be concerned with. She didn't have a bad weight cut. She looked great. She's coming out of fight ready. She looks in better physical shape than we have ever seen her. Rose, a bit sucked out in the cheeks, stoic as always. Rose doing her thing, staying cool, calm, and collected. When they faced off, Halle Berry was the one that was up there facing them off. That was kind of cool. Some celebrity endorsement here in the house today. Very respectful between these two. There was never bad blood to begin with. And I'll be honest, Matt, I finally bit on this one. I have been preaching fight ready, fight ready. Every time a fighter moves out to fight ready, I see the improvements. I see what they do with people physically speaking. I jump on board. I jump on the train. And I talked about fight ready. Weili Zhang is going to be someone I'm going to have to back against Rose Namajunas in the rematch. In the first fight, Weili was a massive favorite. It was a favor to pass spot for me. I did not bet it, so I ended up passing. I didn't get hurt by it. Everybody cashed on that plus 200 Rose Namajunas. Now I'm getting the favorite at a pick'em price tag at minus 120, the one who was minus 275, minus 300 the last time around. I can't turn down that value when she's training out of my favorite gym. I expect this fight to go much longer than the last one did, but we've seen Rose fade late in the fight. The way Weili Zhang turned it up against Joanna Jędrzejczyk when they went 25 minutes, I'm not entirely convinced Rose will be able to handle that the later this fight goes. I'm tempted to do my 3, 4, and 5 round sprinkles on Weili Zhang, but for now it's just the money line. 1.2 units at minus 120. Matt, you got anything on the co-main?
I actually think this is going to be such an amazing fight. I think both of these women are literally in the peak of their careers. It took Rose a little bit to get going. And it's funny, she only has 2 career knockouts, but they were both in the biggest fights of her life at the time against the first title fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, when Joanna was like, the undefeated super champion. Who's ever going to beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk? And boom, here comes Thug Rose, whose only shot was on the ground to score her first career knockout and win the championship. And then again, when people were doubting her and kind of counting her out, her second career knockout comes again as an underdog fighting for the title. Absolutely amazing. But if we take out that slam knockout by Andrade, which is the only loss in the last 6 fights for Rose, she has gotten a lot better. Her skill is so good. And she was beating Andrade in that fight before the slam happened, and then proved it by coming back and fighting Andrade again and really handling her in that fight. So, look, I don't really love the whole like Thug Rose and, Pat Berry, how they kind of walk around with that sort of attitude that they both have. But I am never going to deny that Thug Rose is a fighter. And I'm backing Thug Rose here.
Okay. Well, hate to go head-to-head with you. I totally
get it.
I totally get it. But, this is the spot where if you cashed on Rose the first time around, if you hit that plus 200 ticket, go back to the well. You're already free rolling on this chick. Yeah. She's already showed she can beat her. She showed she can knock her out. She's the current champion. Go for it.
But she wasn't losing that fight the first time. I mean, it was really quick, so we didn't really have enough of a time frame.
Yeah, nobody was losing anything in that fight.
Nobody was. But it wasn't like it was fluky where, Weili was up 3 rounds to none, and in the 4th round, no, it was the first round. She caught her cold, boom. Mm-hmm. But she looked like she was giving, like, Weili's the one to me who's going to have to make corrections. Because the one thing we saw early was, the reach was giving her problems. The fighting stance by Rose was giving her problems. And then it was quick, so we didn't get to see, would Weili Zhang have adjusted and made, corrections in the second round? Probably. She's an amazing fighter. So smart. Her fight IQ is off the charts. We didn't get to see because it never saw a second round. But I don't want to ever go against Thug Rose again. I just love the way she fights. I am never going against her ever.
I can't fault you at all for that, Matt. I can't at all be on the wrong side of that. So, no hard feelings going to head on this one, but this is where I passed last time, and with the line value, I feel like I have to take it. You know what I mean?
Line value certainly on the side of Zhang. I mean, literally a more than 200 favorite everywhere all week at close in the first fight. And I think if you like Zhang, because Thug Rose's popularity is really starting to rise, Don't be surprised if you get a very small plus or even money on Zhang by fight night.
It's possible. It's totally possible. And this is a fight that, if I'm being honest, Matt, I didn't need to bet. It's a fight that I had to bet because of this line value. I feel like I can't pass it up and call myself a sports bettor. But again, I don't fault anybody for being on the side of Rose Namajunas here. And the only thing that I wanted to counter with real quick was the fight with Jessica Andrade. Andrade was working her in that third round. Rose very clearly won rounds 1 and 2 in the rematch. And in the third, Andrade was coming on strong.
Yeah, she was.
That's part of why I made the bet that I did, is that I think if Rose has a similar situation here, if Weili can play it safe, play it better in the first 2 rounds, if Rose tips off at all in that third round, we've seen what Weili can do in rounds 4 and 5. So I think this thing can either be much closer or maybe she can get a late finish. So I just got to go with it.
I think you're right that Weili is going to be the one that's probably going to be able to make better adjustments through the fight. Thug Rose sort of comes in with a plan, and that's the plan. And if the plan's working, great, and if it's not so great. And it looked like the plan was the plan was working early against Andrade. Both fights, it looked like it was going to be working early against Zhang. It'll be interesting to see how this one starts out because Thug Rose is a hot starter in fights.
It's going to be fun. I can't wait. I might lose money this weekend, but I cannot wait.
I might too. I bet her the first time, and only because I thought, man, she's getting so much better. And look, I like it when fighters, because let's face it, for Thug Rose, her problem was always, do I want to be a fighter? Do I not want to be a fighter? You know, my boyfriend Pat Barry's not a fighter anymore because, you know, he really can't be. Do I want to be? I have anxiety about it. And I like the fact that she moved away from Pat a little bit when it came to training, that she had to expand her training beyond just let me train with my boyfriend or fiance, Pat Barry, and into I have to really continue to try to be the best fighter in the world. And I think since she's done that, we've seen a lot of improvement. Man, is she good.
And she's calling herself the champ. She's calling herself the best. I feel like that.
She is the champ. What do you mean calling she is the champ?
I'm saying, you know, she's embracing it, though.
Yes.
That mental
she
aspect
feels
of
better
saying
now.
I'm the best in the world. She's not debating whether or not she's a fighter anymore. She's saying, I am a fighter. I'm the champ. I'm the best. Like, that's a big difference, and that does scare me a little bit.
If she's over in the corner again going, I'm the best, just like last time, because last time I was like, man, is she super nervous? What is this? If you remember, just walking into the
like
cage,
a mantra.
Like,
She was,
I'm the best. I'm the best. And I'm like, wow, is she nervous? I've never. If she's doing it again, watch out for Thug Rose.
If she's walking out to the cage yelling, I'm the best, everyone hit the cash out on that. All right, Matt, we have gotten to the main event, the other rematch, the one everybody's waited for. Kamaru Usman taking on Colby Chaos Covington. Usman came in at 169 on the dot. Covington came in at 169.4. Usman made a statement, as always, first to the scales, looks incredible. Colby Covington, calm, collected, great shape. If I might say, abs popping, I think, harder than I've ever seen them before. He looks like and not that he wasn't going to ever take this fight seriously, but like physically speaking, Colby's not a guy that really jumps off the page at you. He's a cardio machine. It seems like he's put a lot of effort into his strength and conditioning. He looks in better physical shape, I think, than we have seen him before. I don't know what that means. Maybe he's going to sit more on those punches and look to have a power advantage that he's not usually capable of having. Who knows? We see that in boxing sometimes where they come in super heavy versus super light if they think it's going to, fluctuate the way the fight goes. I'm just speculating here. It'll be interesting to see. Luque did weigh in as a backup fighter, missed weight, 172.5, needed the box of shame. We're not going to need him. It's okay. Collect your paycheck, Luque, and go home. This fight is happening.
Does he collect a paycheck for showing up and not making weight as the alternate?
You got to wonder, like, you're the alternate, you're there, but you missed weight. Your whole job was to be there and be on weight. So, like, he's got to get like half a paycheck instead of a whole one.
That was terrible.
So great face-off between these guys. I mean, as you would expect, Dana White didn't let them get anywhere near each other after what happened at that pre-fight presser. Kamaru Usman looking like a dog, staring at a bone with a little bit of meat on it, whereas Colby Covington just smiling at Kamaru. I got to be honest with you, Matt. I know that there's not been a lot of fighters that do the mind game things like McGregor used to anymore, but I feel like Colby Covington is living rent-free in Kamaru Usman's head. If you listened to that pre-fight presser, and I got a lot of shit for this online saying that I thought Covington was winning these exchanges, I don't like the low blows. I don't like that he went after his dad and all that kind of stuff. Trust me, I'm not condoning it
either.
I think there's a line that you can cross when it comes to these combat sports stuff. Leave their family out of it. Make fun of him all you want.
His
if
mom
screwed up.
He was ripping
don't bring
his
mom.
Her husband's in jail, and now he went places he didn't have to go.
Exactly. I completely.
But I agree that he won the presser.
But he absolutely won the presser. And then the thing that got me at the end of this thing, Matt, was that everyone was talking about how Usman was taking it. He was so cool. He was so calm and collected. And he was talking about how he's not letting it get to him. He's not letting it bother him. He's fine. He's going to fight emotionless. When they faced off at the pre-fight presser, Usman's the one that flinched. Colby went up and smiled in his face, and Usman is the one who shoved him, which a lot of people are like cheering him on, saying, yeah, that's great. Go for it. Like, that's just him trying to assert his dominance in this. I think he cracked. I think the guy that was getting to him was close enough for him to touch, and he could not resist reaching out and trying to hurt that man. And to me, that's not the mental state that you necessarily want to be in. I think Colby is doing what he's doing intentionally, and I think he's not fighting emotional going into this fight. I believe this is all very calculated, and I know it may not matter, but to me, that's a slight advantage in this fight that I just wanted to point out and defend my side on. Did you take anything from the pre-fight shenanigans at all on this one?
I thought that Colby won the presser, and I thought the odds movement reflected that because it just before the presser is minus 320, minus 330 Usman. After the presser, minus 290. I was like, thank you, scoop minus 290 because I didn't want to lay 300. Thank you. Keep it going, Colby. Scooped another 285 today. Look, I think Kamaru Usman is a once-in-a-lifetime talent, and I used to hate watching him fight like everybody else because – watching paint dry isn't exciting, even if it's the prettiest paint you've ever seen. But let's give Kamaru Usman credit. His power striking game has gotten so good late in his career. And not against cupcakes and not against chumps, against other elite strikers. He's like, fine, I'm bored with wrestling you. I'll tell you what, Masvidal, I won't even try to take you down. Good night. Oh, you're known for your chin. Night, night. Hey, Gilbert Burns, here's a jab. Oh, sleeping? What? Like, his power strikes have gotten so much better. And when he wants to wrestle, oh, yeah, he's the best wrestler in the division. And he's the best athlete in the division. He is so amazing, Usman. I don't love his personality. He tries to be more outgoing now, and it comes across as disgenuine because I don't think it's who he is. So then he looks uncomfortable and awkward in the press conference. He looks uncomfortable and awkward when he's trying to call people out because it's not really who he is. You don't call someone out and swear with your 3-year-old daughter in your arms. Like, be one or the other. Be the amazing husband, the amazing dad, and the superior athlete, or go be Colby Covington, but you can't be both. Yeah. So he comes across as awkward, unlikable sometimes. But at the end of the day, what he always says is right is that, Colby Covington's very talented. He's really good. But, he just came along in a generation where we had this once-in-a-generation welterweight, and his name is Kamaru Usman. And at the end of the day, Colby Covington has he sort of picked the perfect path. Every once in a while, we see this in UFC where there's a division in transition that allows one or two guys to put on a win streak that is overrated and win a title without actually having to really beat anybody in their prime. And if we look at who Colby Covington's beat, the welterweight division is full of those guys. Rafael Dos Anjos, Robbie Lawler, Damian Maia, Tyron Woodley. Colby fought all of them way well past their prime. How are those wins aging now? T. Woods out fighting YouTubers and getting beat by them. Maya's retired. Robbie Lawler's only in legend fights now. That was a really convenient path back to a title for Colby Covington. Really convenient. Who did he have to beat? He didn't have to fight a Sean Strickland, take on a Wonder Boy, or any of these tough guys. He literally said, give me all the old guys with big names. I'll beat them real quick and throw me back there in Usman because I could sell a pay-per-view. Cha-ching, money, he's got it. But I don't think he can beat Usman is the problem. Colby Covington doesn't care. He just wants to make as much money as he can during his fighting career. And good for him for wanting to do that. And I still think he could be welterweight champion as well someday because Usman's not long for MMA.
You wouldn't think so at this phase.
Yeah, I don't think so. So I still think that 2 years later at 35, Colby may or may not be welterweight champion. There's a lot of younger guys starting to make the move now. Again, that division's in transition where it's just weird how we had a bunch of champs, former champs, title contenders all in a row. Robbie Lawler, Tyron Woodley, Damian Maia, all on the verge of retirement at the same time. But yet, if you look in the UFC rankings, they're all like 2, 4, and ranked 6. So a guy can come in and beat those guys, even though they're all well out of their prime. It makes sense from a ranking standpoint. And now you're back in the title hunt. But does beating Robbie Lawler, Tyron Woodley, and Damian Maia right now seem like a guy who's running through the toughest guys in their prime? Certainly not. And he didn't knock out Tyron Woodley. He got one takedown, and Tyron got a shoulder injury. Everyone's talking about, you see the power of Colby. He knocked out Tyron Woodley. What power? He took him down, and Woodley tapped because his shoulder was hurt. There wasn't any punches landed there. Come on.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally get it, Matt. I totally get it. And I hate to go head-to-head with you here on this one, but I took the value with Colby Covington. I did take one unit at the plus 250, and that's just based on the previous fight and Colby basically giving Usman the best fight we have ever seen. He pushed him harder than anybody else did. He had Usman rocked and wobbled a couple of times in that fight. He had him hurt, and I'm going to side a little bit with Colby Covington on like the low blow that Usman called timeout to kind of recollect himself on. It wasn't a low blow. It was a shot to the gut that could have potentially swayed the fight. There's a lot of things that happened in that fight that were a little bit weird. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like either of these guys. From a personality standpoint, I'm not a fan of either of these guys, but I love the way they both fight. And I know that we have seen the improvements of Kamaru Usman. Everybody's been talking about it. They've been on full display, and I get it. He's absolutely impressed. I love the fighter that he's become, and he might be that once-in-a-generation talent. He might be the greatest welterweight of all time. We'll see. But the fact is, Colby Covington is the only real 170-pounder that he's fought in the last 2 years. Masvidal is a 155er. Burns is a 155er. Masvidal, again, is another 155er. He hasn't done anything since their first fight to really let me know that there's a giant gap between him and Covington.
But what did Colby do? The problem is there wasn't anybody for either of them to fight. Neither one of them wanted to fight Edwards.
Exactly. And that's, I think the argument, everyone is talking about the improvement on Kamaru Usman's side. Colby's done nothing but sit in the lab and prepare for his second title shot against Usman for the last 2 years. So he's made improvements. We just haven't seen them yet. He will have made adjustments. He will be better coming out here. We just haven't seen it. And so because of that, I think I'm getting value on the line. I might burn this ticket. It might be a unit that I'll never get back and never see again trying to bet against the GOAT, Matt. This is just one of those spots where I kind of feel like I have to. I'm prepared to do it. I feel like I'm getting the right number, and so be it. If Usman comes out here and flatlines him in the second round, that's it. It's over. There's no one else I'm ever going to roll the dice against Kamaru Usman with until Khamzat Chimaev has his, day in the sun and gets to the title. There's no point in betting against this man anymore. This is my last hurrah. It's my last shot. Colby Covington has only ever been a favorite except for when he fought Kamaru Usman. So I'm going to take that value at the plus 250 on a guy that I think might be the one and only hope to get it done. And honestly, I hope he wins so we get a trilogy.
Who do you think, how does he win if he wins? Knockout?
So like I said, he had Usman hurt a couple different times in that first fight. I think his pace in the first 3 rounds is something that no human can keep up with.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy.
Usman
puts a crazy
Usman
pace
took
on you.
over the fight the later the fight went, when Colby did finally start to slow down. I think if he pours that pace on again early, I honestly think he can knock out Kamaru Usman. We saw Usman rocked by both Burns and by Masvidal.
Yeah.
If Colby just keeps in his face, stays in that pressure, cranks it up, there's a chance he wins. And then if he's not a knockout guy, I know that, but that's why I kind of mentioned I feel like he's added a little bit of muscle. If he's going to look for an earlier knockout, that is more on the table than it ever has been in his career before. The other alternative is if Colby does what Colby does, this is going to be a 25-minute back and forth war. They're going to be sprinting to the finish here. And he had 3-1 on one of the judges' scorecards last time. I had it scored 2-2 going into round 5 before the knockout in the 5th. It was a very close, very competitive fight. And if we see that again, I always say, Matt, I will take a plus 200 line on a coin flip anything.
Yeah.
If this thing is 2-2 going into 5, I don't care what happens. I'll lose a unit if Kamaru wins round 5 and it's 3-2 Usman and he keeps his belt. That was still a damn good bet in my opinion.
Yeah, it was a great fight, the first one. You have to give Colby credit. He did hit him with a check hook early that I thought really had Usman on rubber legs. And Usman we have seen on rubber legs a couple times. I mean, to your point, Gilbert Burns just didn't have him on rubber legs. He almost had him out.
He was almost gone.
Yeah.
And people give me shit for betting against Usman, but I did bet on Gilbert Burns because of exactly that. Like, I knew he was going to come out, be round 1 or bust, and he almost did it. So, yeah, we're getting close. And I totally respect it. I know people are going to parlay Kamaru Usman. I get it. I just, I got to go with the value again in this spot.
I don't blame you.
All right.
As soon as it went under 300, maybe I got starry-eyed and just hit the cash register button. Yeah. Gimme.
I don't blame you one bit. That's the last couple fights on this card. You can make an argument for either side that you want to, and we're not necessarily either wrong. So this is going to be a fun fight card, Matt. First off, thank you very much for coming on the show with me. We went much later than I meant to, so thanks for the time.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks.
At this point, if you want to, let the people know where they can find you, what you do, the floor is yours. We always appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Clint. Thanks, everybody, for listening to us this long. If you ever need anything from us, I'm at US Integrity. We're a B2B company, so we don't provide any B2C services. But if you're ever at a sports book or even betting at a sports book in the U.S., you can be sure that sports book's probably using U.S. Integrity to make sure there's no suspicious betting going on in the background.
Gotta love it. Keeping the bettors out there safe. Thank you so much, Matt. That was the Undefeated post weigh-in show, folks. We are so pumped up for UFC 268. Good luck on all your degenerate action. Hope we cash some tickets this weekend. Catch me on Twitter at DieHardMMAPod, and let's roll. My hand is out of the phase. There we go. Let's roll.